Ladies and gentlemen, please take your seats.
Você turn off your cell phones or any other devices that may make noise during this celebration of life. Let us begin with these opening words from M. Maureen Killoran. We come together from the diversity of our grieving to gather in the warmth of this community, Davit's community, giving stubborn witness to the belief that in times of sadness, there is room for laughter. In times of darkness, there always will be light. May we hold fast to the conviction that what we do with our lives matters and that a caring world is possible after all. We have come together today in grief and gratitude to honor and celebrate the life of Davit Zargarian. Davit Zargarian was born in Teheran, Iran on March 29, 1961, where he grew up with his sister Noel and his brother Razmik, until he immigrated to Canada in 1980, settling first in Toronto. Over the next 15 years, he earned a Bachelor of Science degree from the University of Toronto, a Master of Science at the University of Waterloo, and his PhD at the University of Ottawa. After his postdoctoral work in California, Davit began his 30-year career as a professor of chemistry at Université de Montréal. During those years, he married Angela and had 4 sons, Andre, Garen, Karlin, and Simon, and had the joy of playing with his grandsons, Makar, Henrik, and Vigo. Davit leaves behind a legacy of laughter, commitment, and community. He lived with a fierce sense of dedication to his family and loved ones, and his passion will live on through his family and the people that he inspired. Many of you are here today, I would imagine. The sorrow of his loss reflects the joy Davit's life brought to all of us. And let us take a moment to light a candle. A flaming candle has many symbols. Among them, it is a symbol of hope, the sacred, the quest for truth, the warmth of community, and the light of reason, all qualities that Davit possessed. We light a flaming candle to create sacred space for ceremony. Sacred space is the dwelling place of connection. It can transport people to that place of transcendence, of a deeper relationship with ourselves, with each other, and with the mystery of life. We light this candle today to create sacred space for Davit Zargarian as we gather to celebrate and honor his life and legacy. There will be a number of tributes. And as each tribute unfolds, we are invited not only to listen, but to gather the fragments of Davit's life, stitched together by the voices of those closest to him. These shared memories become a tapestry woven with laughter, kindness, resilience, and hope that honor his journey and the ways he touched the lives around him. Following these sharings, we create a space for quiet reflection. In music, we hold Davit in our thoughts, letting gratitude and remembrance find their places in our hearts. This pause allows each of us to honor Davit in our own way, whether through prayer, meditation, or a simple acknowledgement of how he graced our lives. Now I would invite Caroline Kabouche to the podium to share a poem in Armenian with us. There are English translations on the seats. Caroline?
Today I have the privilege of reciting one of Professor Davit Zargarian's favorite poems, written by his favorite poet, Baruch Sevak. I was fortunate to know him through his presentations and his moderating of events at the Armenian Association of Toronto's Public Awareness Committee. This poem is a father's voice to his son, a voice of wisdom, resilience, and integrity. It speaks of the winding path of life, of the value of hardship, of choosing truth over comfort, and walking with dignity, even when the road is steep. Ինձ հետ լինի, թե առանց ինձ, իմ բալիկս կմեծանաս, իմ օգնությամբ, թե առանց ինձ, դու երբևէ կհասկանաս, թե ոնց պիտի ապրել կյանքում, թե ոնց պիտի նայել կյանքին, թե աշխարհում ինչն է էժան, թե աշխարհում ինչն է անգին։ Ինքս էլ խրատ կարդացողին ոչ հարգում եմ, ոչ հանդուրժում, տափակ թե սուր քարոզներից, ինքս էլ եմ միշտ տղաս խորշում։ Ու թե հիմա իմ բալիկս, ես քո գլխին ճառ եմ կարդում, ապա միայն նրա համար, որ շատ հաճախ կյանքում մարդու, եթե իր մեծ բաժինն ունի ժամանակը, ինքը դարը, բայց եւ այնպես քիչ չի ազդում նաեւ ընտրած ճանապարհը։ Գուցե քեզ հետ լինի նույնը, որ պատել է հաճախ ինձ էլ, հաճախ շուրջս աչկացելով, այն մարդկանց եմ ես նախանձել, որոնց կյանքը հեշտ է անցնում, ասես կյանք չի, այլ խճուղի, անխոչնդոտ եւ անարգելք, կանոնի պես հարթ ու ուղիղ, դպրոց, հետո ինչ-որ մի բուհ, մի ազդեցիկ զանգահարող եւ տաք տեղն է ապահոված։ Այդպես ապրել դու չես կարող։ Չէի ուզի, որ քո կյանքը հարթ խճուղու նման լիներ։ Դու մի անցիր ասֆալտ ճամփով։ Գերադասիր ճամփան շինել։ Դու սիրո հետ միշտ հաշտ ապրիր, բայց խույս մի տա տառապանքից, նա սրբում է աչքը փոշուց, նա մաքրում է հոգին ժանգից, տառապանքից չեն մեռնում, չէ, այլ ավելի են պնդանում, ապա քինված սիրտը հետո գալիք ցավը հեշտ է տանում, ախ մի նվա, հայրդ երբեք չի հանդրժում նվացողին, շատ ավելի լավ է տղաս, դառն արցունքով աչքը ցողիր ու քո ճամփան շարունակիր, թող որ լինի նա քարքարոտ, բայց քո հոգում եթե լինի բարու, լավի, սիրո, կարոտ դու չես հոգնի, դու կքայլես, կբարձրանաս դու սարնի վեր, դրա համար ոգի է պետք, դրա համար պետք չեն թևեր։ Ազնիվ եղիր ամեն ինչում, ով է կյանքում սովից մեռել, ճշտի համար աքսոր չկա ստի հանդեպ, ինչու լռել, իսկ մեր շուրջը դեռ կան մարդիկ, երբ պետք է մեջք են ծռում, երբ որ պետք է հրհրում են, պետք է ժպտում, պետք է լռում, պետք է իրենց մատն են տնկում։ Դու մի եղիր կյանքում տհաս, դու հասկացիր, հենց այս գլխից մի մոռացիր երբեք տղաս, ազնվությունն այն է միայն, որ չի փոխվում, ոնց էլ շուռ տաս, նա մի ճերմակ երես ունի, ոչ թե 7-8 գունեղաստար։ Մի տրտնջա, դու հիշում ես ձախորդ օրեր կուգան կերթան, մի տրտնջա, եթե լավից ետ ես ընկել, ինքդ հասիր, մի տրտնջա, բայց և կյանքը, գրքի նման դու մի կարդա, գրքի նման քեզնից հեռու ինչ որ օտար մարդկանց մասին, հպարտ եղիր, բայց ոչ գոռոզ, դատարկ մարդն է գոռոզանում, հայլը խելոք ու տխմարին դրանով էր զանազանում, հորդ նման հպարտ զգա, որ ոչ մեկի տուն չես քանդել, ոչ մի ազնիվ խոսք չես կտրել, ոչ մի ազնիվ միտք չես բանտել, որ շիտակ ես քայլել կյանքում և լռել ես եթե հաճախ, ապա միայն նրա համար, որ առևտուրը մանրածախ, հաճախ միայն զիզի-բիզի զանգուլակ է նետել շուկա, իսկ դու զուրկ ես զիզի-բիզուց, կեղծ դրամ էլ հետդ չկա, դու փոքր ես դեռ չգիտես, թե ոնց պիտի կյանքին նայել, դու փոքր ես դեռ, երբ մեծանաս, դառնաս արդեն հասուն ջահել խորհուրդներն իմ, և հոգնած, և ավելորդ թվանգուց է, կյանքում այն ժամ, էլ չլինեն նման բացեր, նման խոցեր, էտա աստված, ես էլ կյանքում ուրիշ ոչինչ չեմ երազում, գույրը տղաս, ինչպես գիտես երկու աչք է միայն ուզում, խորհուրդները իմ թող հնանան, ծաղիկն է լոկ այդպես մեռնում, երբ ամրանը ծառի վրա հասուն նիրք է արդեն դառնում, հանուն գալիք վառ խարույկի ես պատրաստ եմ այսօր ծխալ, հանուն վաղվա ճշմարտության, թող որ այսօր լինեմ սխալ։
Thank you, Caroline. I now invite Davit's brother, Razmik Zargarian, to come forward.
Good afternoon. I'm not sure if I need this, but I've never had a speech in a church, not willingly. Thank you, Caroline. I think that was the most Armenian that most of you have ever heard. And it's a good segue because obviously that was Davit's first language. English and French were third and fourth. So if you probably noticed, I think when Davit was introduced, it immediately started from Toronto. But his life actually started in Teheran. So I've prepared just a very short introduction, really, to his life. I'm okay. Thanks. Introduction to his life before he moved to Canada. To talk about, I guess, our family, my sister Arne and I, myself and Davit, I have to start with our mother. There's a remarkable woman in Glendale, California, who's being cared for in a nursing home. She has late-stage dementia and is unaware that her son died on August 15th. This remarkable woman, our mother, was only 24 years old when our father died of a work-related accident. So if you could imagine a 24-year-old woman in the 1960s in Iran, all the odds were stacked against her. But our mother raised us as a single mom with grit and pride. We grew up in a loving and caring home. Other than not having a father at home, everything else was as normal as any other life or any other family. That's how our mother raised us. We lived in a low to middle class neighborhood. We went to our local elementary and middle school. And all three of us did well in school. But Davit did more than well. Davit was a very good student. Some of his friends jokingly say that his worst score was A+. It seems as if learning came naturally. Teachers loved him. It was, I guess, one of their bright spots when they came to class and Davit was there. But students also loved him. He was not proud. He was not stuck up. He had a way of interacting with just about everyone. And I'm sure most of you know that because that continued throughout his life. He could communicate with the bookworms and the geeks and the quiet guys and the bullies, and even with those who were just looking for trouble. He could interact with them. Making personal connections with others was effortless, or he made it look effortless. The ability to connect to everyone made him a popular teenager. Well, a lot more popular with girls. He could chat with older aunts and uncles and even with relatives that we would see once a year. He just had that way of just touching everyone and connecting. He was always curious about his surrounding, about people around him, about science, technologies, just about anything. He just would not stop being curious and explore things. I remember as a teenager, I could see myself growing up and becoming an engineer, an accountant, a firefighter, I don't know, paramedics, carpenter, just about anything. I could just see myself doing that. I could never guess what Davit would do. I could never guess that. He was always different. You could not put him into a category. But we all knew that he will aim high, whatever he did, and he's not going to stop until he gets there. After high school, of course, his scores were very high, and he was easily accepted to many universities in Iran. But when we finished our high school, Iran was in turmoil. Universities and other academic institutions, they operated with a lot of interruptions. That would not go well with Davit. So Davit set his sight to universities abroad. Lucky for Canada, Davit moved here and started a new chapter of his life in his adopted home. He really loved Canada. And he never changed. It was Davit as always. He actually changed us. I've missed my brother. I can talk about him for hours. I won't. But I'm more interested in hearing your remarks, your stories, your memories. I'm all ears. Thank you.
Razmik, thank you for your eloquent words about your brother. I now invite Davit's sister-in-law, Hilda Connidis, to come forward and share some of her thoughts.
Thank you, Razmik. And it's so good to stand here and see Davit in you and in his family here. My name is Christine Arnet Connidis, and I am part of Davit's Arnet Connidis Zargarian family, one of the brothers and sisters of our dear Angela. I know you will forgive me peeking through my cell phone here. I stand here before you to say only a few words in tribute to Davit. And there is so much that can be said, and thank you, Razmik, and all of you will have stories, and we will have many times ahead of hearing so much about Davit. And this is also early days in our unexpected great sadness and mourning for Davit. When my brother called to let me know that Davit had died, and so unexpectedly, I was with my niece, Nora. She is the daughter of one of my sisters and part of the circles of close cousins in the Zargarian and the Arnet Connidis families. And Angela, those close circles of cousins and family are one of the great gifts from you and Davit together. That day and that night, Nora shared our first tears and our stunned and quiet times. Shared them with me as we began to take it in that Davit had gone on ahead before all of us here. This is still that early time. We are honoring that grief and mourning too today. It is not to be passed by, and it cannot be passed by. And that is right, even though it makes celebrating and even speaking of Davit one of the most difficult things I know. We know that later the time will come when our sorrow turns to praise and our lamentations to celebrations. We know in Khalil Gibran's well-known verse, which will never be trite, that the deeper that sorrow carves into our being, the more joy we can contain. And how else could it be? Today, I want, like Razmik, to hear anything that anybody can say, the solace and the joy and the to heaven and to hell, as Angela's mother said on her wedding vows, mistaken, not understanding the English. Today I want to recount one simple story of our Davit. It is not my story, but a story that Nora shared with me that first day we had together. And I think it's a memory of a little interaction she had with Davit some years ago. It really touched me, and I could see Davit in it so well. Nora had received a text message from Davit when she meant to and wanted to reply to. And months later, she realized that she had still not replied to it, and she felt regret about that. And again, this was a few years ago. And she contacted Davit and apologized to him for not having replied to his text. And she said his swift reply, "What? You've been worrying about a text? You go out and keep living your life." Thank you, Davit. So I just want to conclude by saying we will rise up and live our lives, just as today we are really very much mourning our dear Davit. And it's an honor to be here speaking about him to you all. Thank you.
Thank you, Christine. What wonderful words to live by. I would now invite Davit's cousin, Masis Zargarian, to come forward and share his thoughts and memories of his cousin.
Dear family, friends, and honored attendees. Among the many talents Davit possessed, he was also a gifted speaker. I am not. I always imagined Davit would deliver a beautiful speech at my own Memorial Day. It is with great sorrow that I find myself here today reflecting on his extraordinary life. Since childhood, Davit was more than a cousin to me. He was a close friend and a brother. Davit was a few years younger than me and our other cousin, Saroj, but mature enough to join us in our adventures. We grew up together in a vibrant Armenian neighborhood in Teheran, just a street apart. We spent hours building kites from paper and glue to compete with local kids. We constructed scooters from wood and old roller bearings. On hot summer days, we went to the local community swimming pool 1 hour before opening. We wanted to get in the pool the first ones to be. We saved our pennies for weekend movies. Sometimes we could only afford 2 tickets and had to walk the 2 bus routes, joking and laughing along the way. At the theater, we often argued with the ticket attendant that Davit it's a kid. You should accept him without a ticket. If we couldn't get through, Saroj would sneak from the back door and join us inside. Each of us had our own roles. I was the accountant, Saroj was the joker, and Davit was full of life. This life for creating, tinkering, and building together returned in recent years. Not long ago, during one of our regular calls, Davit told me about a magnetic stirrer that they use in the lab. He had read an article suggesting it could be built more cheaply using a specific electronic circuit. Naturally, he was curious and wanted to test the claim. So I invited him to come to Toronto on the following weekend so we could build and test it together. We bought the parts, assembled the stirrer. It was like old times. We enjoyed every moment. The test results weren't as we hoped, mostly because we didn't have the proper steering bar. It was late Sunday afternoon, and Davit had to drive back to Ottawa. He said he would test it in his lab the next day. But two hours later, he called me. With a voice full of excitement, he said, "The steerer works perfectly." I asked, "How you know?" He said he couldn't wait until the next day, and he drove straight to the University of Toronto to test it in his friend's lab. That was Davit. No barrier could stop him from reaching to his goals. In recent years, I grew even closer to Davit and became more familiar with his rich and active life. My wife and I often wondered how he managed to do so much. Now we realize we were just one part of his much larger world. I would like also to speak about Davit's passion and love for Armenia and Armenian community. His involvement spanned an impressive array of organizations, both within Armenia and across the diaspora. Indeed, I am certain each group to which he gave his time could stand here today and share heartfelt stories of the remark he left. As a member of the Armenian Association of Toronto, AAT, and its Public Awareness Committee, I would like to specifically speak about its impact on our small nonprofit organization. Davit joined the committee in October 2024. He elevated our work with his exceptional knowledge, dedication, and communication skills. Davit played a key role as both the organizer and the moderator in several significant initiatives. He connected us to leading figures and organizations such as Armenian Society of Fellows, ASOF, interview with Honorable Andrew Turner, Canada's ambassador to Armenia, interview with the Board of Directors of the Children of Armenia Fund, COAF, interview with the representative of SERA, Center for the Study, Preservation, and Enhancement of Armenian Cultural Heritage. On behalf of the AAT Board, it is my honor to announce that our association will inaugurate an annual walkathon in Davit's memory, with proceeds dedicated to one of his beloved charities. Through this initiative, we hope to sustain his legacy of service and care. Davit gave generously to our community, leaving a lasting impression through his warmth, intellect, and compassion. Dear Davit, we will miss you. Rest in peace. You will live forever in our hearts and memories. Thank you.
Thank you. And now I'd like to invite to the podium Davit's longtime colleague and friend, Frank Schapper. Frank?
Good afternoon, everybody. I'm Frank Schapper, and I'm one of Davit's colleagues from the University of Montréal, and one of his many, many friends from the chemistry community. For Davit, being a professor in chemistry was not a job, it was clearly a profession, because Davit was a scientist at heart. And as all good scientists, Davit was interested in discovery. He asked himself questions, and he needed to know the answer to these questions. And he was passionate about that, and he couldn't stop. And he didn't mind at all if you didn't share these interests, but neither did he care that you didn't share these interests, or what the community thought, or would give a high-impact paper. He wanted to know, and that was sufficient for him, and he expected that it would also be sufficient for you. Davit very early discovered his interest in organometallic chemistry, and he was one of the pioneers introducing this relatively new area to Canada. To emphasize the importance of that field to the non-chemist in the room, nearly every plastic you touch and half of medications you take at one point were involved with organometallic chemistry. He established this field at the University of Montréal, and he was widely and internationally respected for the really profound quality of his work. Being an experimental scientist, Davit loved data and putting his hands on the original facts. He did not run experiments to prove some pet theory. He always asked himself, what would the experiments tell us? How can we explain that what we saw? If Davit would have written a paper about climate change, which he didn't, he would put a photo of a thermometer in there because he just could not believe that we would not be interested to see where the data was coming from. Last but not least, Davit loved discussing chemistry with colleagues on conferences, with students in seminars, and with whoever he met in the corridor. I will really miss these discussions. His unique blend of modest, opinionated, tolerant stubbornness, which he had in those discussions. As a professor at the university, Davit was exactly at the right spot, because he did not only love science, he also loved teaching. Not only to his graduate students who were his partners in his research, but also to the literally hundreds of undergraduate students who passed through his classes. And while he was not really somebody who jumped onto every single fad and fashion which came around, he was always looking around for different ways to teach subjects, to introduce them to students. And we, his colleagues, were quite used to a quite big number of emails we were receiving with the results of his researches. In the last years before his retirement, Davit took over one of our first-year classes, and I think it might have been one of the hardest for him to teach. Not because of the subject, but because in a first-year class, a large number of students failed this class. And Davit didn't like that. And he did not accept that. So in all the years he was teaching this class, he was constantly looking for new methods how to introduce the subject. He changed his evaluation every single year, looking for the magical formula which would work for everybody. The only thing he did not do was actually making the exam easier. Because he didn't want that class to be easy. He just wanted everybody to master the subject. On a more personal note, Davit was not only a passionate and successful chemist, he was also a family man. And he did not do it the easy way. When he started in Montreal at the time, which is practically the most difficult part of his career, he and Angela already had their 4 sons. I would not call Davit my role model because there are easier ways than to divide your life between 2 cities. But he was kind of my psychological security blanket. When we got our own kids, you have been or you are or you have seen young parents. There are these moments where you want to cry or scream or just desperately to sleep. And then when I was really at the end of my tether, then without wanting to, this thought popped in my mind. I was saying to myself, oh, shut up, David did this with 4 kids. I admit this did not solve my immediate problem, but it definitely cut down on the whining. David was a tremendous colleague, and he was an incredible friend. But a personality such as David's is not simply born and evolves in a vacuum. It evolves from interacting with those close to him. In response to their challenges and their support, to their criticism and their praises. I'm thus extremely grateful to everybody here, to his colleagues, students and friends, to his family, and in particular to Angela and their sons. You all had your hands in making David the wonderful man he was. Thank you.
Thank you. I now invite David's PhD supervisor from the University of Ottawa, Dr. Howard Alper, to come forward and say a few words.
Angela, the 4 sons, Andre, Garen, Karlin, and Simon. I heard those names, the sons at that time, often from David. And the mother, Angela's mother, friends and other attendees. Not only do I wish to convey condolences and deepest sympathy, but I want you to know what a great privilege it is personally to be asked to say a few words about David. He was a remarkable person, so proud of his Armenian heritage. David était fier de son héritage arménien, très fier. I had marvelous discussions with him on Armenia, the Armenian language, culture, and learned so much from him. David pursued his PhD with me in chemistry, as was mentioned, at the University of Ottawa. I quickly came to realize that this was a person of the highest integrity. Very important attribute to have. Creative, productive, as the previous speaker referenced. He was a mentor to many undergraduate students, graduate students in our research group, and postdoctoral fellows. People already had their PhD. His personality shone through, and that made an enormous difference. And with that engaging personality, he was interested in an incredible variety of subjects. David and I talked endlessly, sometimes, on different issues. And when he left to do postdoctoral fellowship, end up at Université de Montréal eventually, that has continued until a few days before he passed away. I want to give you an example of our correspondence, and in a way it is so touching and poignant, but illustrative of the person we all knew. I picked emails from February 7, 2023, 2.5 years ago or so. And he wrote, "I'm not sure you heard about John Harrod passing away." John Harrod was a professor at McGill University. If not, here's the obituary written on their website. My wife and I read, we knew John Harrod, met his wife several times, and I wrote back to Davit, "Grateful to you for telling us. He was one of the intellectual giants amongst the many people we met over the years. Personally, I could discuss any issue with John Harrod and learn much from him." And then Davit wrote back, "I share the same sentiment with you. I can't say John was a friend. That would be both pretentious and also inaccurate, because we were colleagues at two different universities. But he was truly an idol for me, someone I aspired to learn from and be like, a true gentleman. I was so sad when I heard the story. What irked me no end was that I tried for a few years to contact him and go to see him, but there was always silence. I should have persisted. I should have been more aggressive, but I learned that he was deep in Alzheimer's, suffering from Alzheimer's. And perhaps," Davit said, "it was intentional that neither he nor his family stayed in touch with his ex-colleagues. I can see their pain, because I almost feel the same about my mother. I feel I need to protect her from other people's gaze, because the person she is now is not who she was before." Anyway, Davit said, these are the ravages of life, I suppose. There is similar stuff in store for most of us. Besides feeling the pain, we need to learn from such episodes. I took that all in and wrote a concluding note. "I greatly appreciated what you told me about trying to contact John Harrod and relating it to your mother. The need to protect one's own mother or spouse or other family is, I would say, the ultimate act of love for the person who gave birth to you, who helped shape you as a person growing up and maturing. And so, yes, my perspective, Davit, is exactly what happened with his family and like you. So please, in such a situation, the best one can do, in all but a rare exceptional case, is to respect the family's wishes. Do not blame yourself for the inability to contact John. Remember him for the marvelous human being he was. And Davit, you are a truly impressive, inspirational person. These emails are powerful testimonials to you, as well as commenting on John Harrod. May Davit Zargarian's memory forever be a blessing. Thank you.
Dr. Alpert, thank you for your words. And I now would invite one of Davit's students, Boris Favre, to please come to the podium.
Good afternoon. If there is one thing I learned thanks to Davit, it's how to speak in front of a large audience. Today, however, I find this exercise particularly difficult. My name is Boris. I was a student in his research group from 2009 to 2014. I speak to my own name, but also on behalf of several former students of his groups. Davit was more than a supervisor to us. He was a mentor, a spiritual father, a friend. He created in his laboratory an excellent, relaxed atmosphere. He gave us our chance by accepting us into his group beyond our handicaps, our differences, our weaknesses. We feel like a family, heterogeneous, yet united in a research laboratory, where the line between our private life and academic lives was blurred. He was our staunch defender when conflicts arose. He was not always in town, but when he was there, it was always a pleasure to discuss chemistry with him. He would come to see us in the lab, one by one, to ask about us, about our chemistry. One of his frequent sayings was, "Boris, I was at home and I had a crazy idea. What would happen if we mix this chemical and that chemical?" We would run the reaction, and most of the time, nothing much came out of it. But sometimes we got surprising results. We went to the laboratory without pressure, without stress. He passed on to us his thirst for discovery, the passion for research, and the joy of finding something new. He encouraged us to take part in conferences, to learn to speak up, to socialize, to meet new collaborators, and to discover new horizons. He gave us the opportunity to travel abroad, to attend conferences in Portugal, in Russia, or to do internships in France, in the United States, and more, to start new collaborations. These experiences left us with unique memories and stories. Writing up our scientific results, our articles, was, however, quite arduous. He was very demanding and meticulous on his writing. One hand had to be patient. Often, he would rewrite the same sentence 3 or 4 times in different ways. We would sit in his office, searching for the exact word to use for several minutes. Then he would pause the work to think, or to make sure we hadn't forgotten any other important details. Yet this process often proved fruitful. During my doctoral work, I published 7 articles with him. Finally, after a few years of adventure with Davit, the time came to leave. We had to finish our work, submit our thesis, and defend them. This was a difficult period. He demanded the best from us before letting us go. With time, I came to understand that he was deeply saddened to see his students leave the group. One day he confided to me that if he had money, he would pay his students to stay in his group and continue research together. Several of us, his former students, have kept in touch with him. We meet and call each other regularly, taking time to receive good advice, to share a few drinks, a good meal, and fascinating discussion. David, you will remain alive through your teaching and forever alive in our hearts. Thank you.
Thank you so much, Boris. I now invite David's beloved family, his wife Angela, his sons André, Garen, Karlin, and Simon, to please come to the stage.
Papa never wanted anything to be easy, so to all the speakers today, he brought his grandkids to run around. One final test for Boris and everyone else. I don't know what you guys have in store for me. I'll probably take this out. Can everyone hear me okay? Okay. Oh, sorry. Okay. So, thank you, boys. Keeping us on our toes. It's been difficult to put into words how lucky I am to have had a father who lived his life with passion and integrity, who was always proud to be our papa, and who took the role seriously. Like Razmik said, he never felt like he wanted for anything in childhood. He was deeply grateful to his mother, his brother and sister, and his extended family for everything they gave him. But the fact that he lost his father at such a young age had a profound impact on him that I know personally. He had to write his own playbook as a dad. His teachings began before any of us were born. His success in his home country, and though it would only be later in life that we could truly appreciate it, the courage and drive it took to come to a new country, master a new language, thrive academically, professionally, and socially served as a deep source of inspiration to us all. Though having 4 kids at a young age could not have been easy, I have 2 and it's tough, and I'm not so young. He always saw it as a point of pride and joy in his life. He was the type of man who would make us cardboard saws and hammers when there was no money for toys, who would play with us in the driveway or in the road when he got home from a long day of work, and who stayed up into the early morning hours making a backyard rink when it was -20 outside. And he loved all of it. My relationship with Papa wasn't built on big trips or grand plans. He loved both of those things, and he got to share them with others, but it wasn't part of our dynamic. Instead, I had the privilege of a relationship built on shared values and experiences, regular hangouts and long conversations. I always knew I could call him about anything, serious or trivial. I knew that if I was listening to something on the CBC, he probably was too, and we would probably share a laugh about it later. I knew that when he came over, he would bring a homemade stew or fresh-baked bread, packaged in an upcycled bag or container, because nothing could go to waste. We had a deeply integrated life, my dad and I, a sense of closeness that leaves me beyond grateful for his presence and unable to describe the sadness of his passing. But our bond wasn't just a single spoke between the two of us. Being a full participant in someone's life means learning and appreciating the intricate webs that form their other relationships. His network was vast, spanning space and time and cultures. I don't know if anyone other than him could have kept track of all his different circles of family, friends, and co-conspirators in a seemingly endless stream of projects, initiatives, and causes that all mattered deeply to him. Of Papa's various circles, dearest to my heart are those he shared with my mother, my brothers, my wife, my 2 boys, and I. No parent or husband is perfect, but even in his most imperfect moments, he never wavered in his dedication to and love for us all. He was proud of all his boys, and he pushed us to do better, and I can still hear his voice when I'm doing something hard, telling me that I'll be able to get through it. My mother, my brothers, and I built with him a lifetime of memories, of happiness and sadness, of struggle and celebration, and lots of laughter. Through them, I got to learn more about Papa and about myself. My brothers are his greatest gift to me. He left the best parts of himself with them. And without them, I wouldn't be able to get through this. As I grew into an adult, I had the pleasure of seeing my father through different eyes. I needed that. No, it's okay. This first happened through Robin, who developed a strong connection and rich relationship with Papa. They visited each other when sick and discussed shared values surrounding family, the environment, and the benefits of a frugal lifestyle. It filled my heart to watch them learn from each other's very different shared backgrounds and experiences. Then Robin and I began our own journey into parenthood, and I got to re-experience Papa at his best, as a father to young children. His deep love and enthusiasm for my boys and my nephew, unburdened by the fears and anxieties of parenting, allowed him to be his most joyful and carefree self. My last memories of him all involve him laughing and playing with Henrik and Makar, taking them swimming, reading to them, sneaking them treats especially, nurturing their inquisitive side, mess be damned, and chasing them around the house. He never missed an opportunity to see them, and they love him more than I can say. I wish we had another 10, 20, or 30 years with Papa. I'd give anything for another minute. But I'm also very grateful I got to see him become our Met's Papa, a man who grew up without his father, teaching another generation of boys how to learn, laugh, and play. The last few weeks have been a strange mixture of dealing with the crushing sadness and anger over what we've all lost, while trying to center the profound gratitude for what we had, and especially what he's left behind. Because Papa gave us so much, he made tapping into that sense of thanks and appreciation relatively easy. Still, there are times when the sense of loss takes over, when it's impossible to ignore that so much joy and magic has been taken far too soon. During one of those moments, as I looked at my boys and wished they could have had more time with him, I realized that it is now up to my brothers and I to pick up where Papa left off and help make the world a better place for our current and future kids. It won't be easy to do it without him, but thankfully, he gave us a head start and left us his playbook. Thank you.
There have been many times this week I thought I ran out of tears like many of us, but definitely still lots there. Some of my earliest memories with my dad, with Papa, are from when we lived in Montreal. I remember so vividly the stories he'd tell us, real or made up, that would always leave us in stitches. I remember the road hockey games where Andre and I truly believed that we had overcome our dad's best effort. Most of all from that time, I remember waiting at the mouth of our driveway almost every day for him to walk home from work. As soon as I'd see him turn the corner, I could still have the image in my mind today. I'd run arms wide open, full with the kind of glee that only a child can have for their father. That was from 1993 to 97, and it was actually the last time that our family was all living and working in the same city. For 27 years, Papa commuted between Montreal, where he worked, and Ottawa, where we lived. This was not by choice, obviously, but by practical necessity, to provide for us, and also to give back to his world, to his community in the way he needed, to work a meaningful job that you've heard about today. Not only was he away from our mother and his 4 boys during the week, at those times and really throughout his adult life, he lived thousands of kilometers away from his family, from his mother, from his siblings, from cousins that would extend beyond counting, who were all in LA, some in Toronto. Distance, though, never limited or constrained his love for us, and it didn't impact the bond we all shared. When he was in Montreal, especially in the early days, I'd call him daily. Much like our son is now, I was a very, very early riser. So these calls would often be around 5 a.m. He didn't mind it one bit. His roommate at the time, who's here today, probably did. He was always excited to hear what kind of important updates a 7-year-old would have for him. And of course, when he was home with us, so those times when he wasn't in Montreal, he was every bit a devoted father. He poured himself into our pursuits. You heard Andre talk about hockey. My brothers and I all fell in love with hockey at a young age, like so many boys around here do. Not only did he build that outdoor rink for us, making it better every single year, but he would take skating lessons that he could play with us. When we got a bit older and we switched from hockey to football, he would throw the ball outside with me when it was absolutely too hot to run, too wet to catch, and too cold to feel your fingers. But he never complained one bit. As you might imagine, growing up in Iran, none of these sports were ever his interest. They were never his passion. But they became that way because they were ours. When he became a grandfather, a Metz Papa, to his 3 grandchildren, we got to see that joy anew. When he's around them, Henrik, Makar, and Vigo, it's very hard for anyone else to get in anywhere. That's because he loved to play with them, he loved to hold with them, he loved to read with them, and they all loved being with him. Just like we did when we were boys, they all gravitated to him and his energy. 13 years ago, I moved to Vancouver. Not knowing at the time that it would become my long-term home. I now have a wife, a son, a home, and a business there. It's my home, my community. Much the same way as my papa, I chose to lay down roots far from the other people that I love and the places where I grew up. Like my father, that has meant missing a lot of shared time and shared memories with families. Since his death 2 years ago, I've felt very acutely the absence of those years. Especially now that there are no more memories to be made with him, no more jokes to be told, no new links or news short articles to share. One of the hardest parts is, of course, knowing that our son and his other grandchildren will not grow up with him. They won't be, and he won't be around to see them grow up. Like Andre said, though, I take such pride and such joy in knowing that he had the chance to see them, to have grandchildren, and to pass on, like Andre said, the fatherly playbook. I'm sure, like many others in this room, it's easy to feel hard done by right now when you lose someone. When you lose someone you love so deeply. Without a chance to say goodbye, a chance for one last talk, or a chance for one last hug. There are so many things that I wish I had asked, so many things that I wish I'd told him over the years, and those will now go unsaid. But at least I now know how he felt all those years ago in Montreal, seeing his son running up the block, arms wide open, wanting nothing more than to hug his papa. And when I have those moments now, I'll always think of him. Thank you.
Before I start, I just want to say a special thank you to everyone who took the time to come out here. It's touching to see such a full house and to see so many people impacted by his life. Special thank you to everyone who came in from California. Having you guys here makes me feel close to him. Razmik, when I see you, it's like looking at him. And it's going to be tough to watch you guys all go home. My dad was, to sum it up, quite a character. Whenever I was introduced to someone as his son, I could immediately feel the effect that he had on the people in his life. Whether it was family, colleagues, students, even just the cashier at the grocery store. He had a significant impact on almost every single person he ever met. He could spark a conversation with anyone, and he wasn't afraid to engage as long as time permitted, anybody could tell you. But the experience of a deep conversation with my dad was a privilege. Typically peppered with stories from his past, jokes, science facts, or just his philosophies on life. He was never shy to dive deep into touchy subjects, and he would honestly voice his thoughts and opinions. There was no filter. There was no sugarcoating. He would tell you what you needed to hear, not what you wanted to hear. And although sometimes his blunt honesty could be jarring, this was a man that I felt for a long time had all the answers. This was a man who, when he was fresh out of high school with little to no money, came to a new continent with a new language, new cultures, new customs, and had next to no connections here. But somehow, within a few short years, he had immersed himself in the culture. He had a new set of friends. He was enrolled at the University of Toronto. He would become not only fluent in French and English, but he mastered both languages with grammatical precision. As if that wasn't enough, he soon met a beautiful woman, my mother. He married her, he had 4 sons with her, and he juggled all of these responsibilities while simultaneously earning himself a PhD in organic chemistry. Throughout my life, I watched my father hold himself and all those around him to the highest standard. He challenged you to meet your full potential, to live honestly, without regrets, without taking shortcuts, and he led by example. He was a magical combination of a blunt realist, but also an eternal optimist. He knew that nothing meaningful in life was going to come easily, but at the same time, anything and everything was possible if you really applied yourself. Being raised by someone with this much drive and relentless work ethic has given myself almost a delusional level of self-confidence. I truly believe through hard work and perseverance, anyone can accomplish great things because I've seen it firsthand. His story gives me strength during the tough times, and it gives me intense gratitude during the good times. Aside from his professional accomplishments, he was a loving father, a devoted husband, and most recently a very dedicated grandparent. Watching him with my nephews gave me a special gift in allowing me to relive some of my best childhood memories with him and remind me of all the best times we had in my early years. Too many to count. My father was a complex man with many great qualities. On the one hand, he was a serious academic, a hard worker, a stoic realist. But on the other hand, he was, to his core, a joker who loved to laugh, loved to crack corny dad jokes, and had no shortage of stories of himself as a kid or in university playing pranks and goofing around. To this day, my brothers and I still crack up quoting his one-liner dad jokes and some of his more entertaining tales from his days at U of T. And although we had so many great family trips and significant life events together, my most cherished moments with him will always be some of the more mundane ones. Whether it was just our day-to-day routine when he and I shared a 2-bedroom apartment in Montreal, or just playing chess together on a rainy day, one-on-one time with my father was rarely your average interaction. And it was almost guaranteed you would walk away from that exchange with some nuggets of wisdom and valuable life advice, whether you asked for it or not. His presence will be missed, and his absence will be felt deeply in our family and in many others. And although he left us far too soon with so much left unsaid, he has left his mark on this world and on all of us. He lived a full and accomplished life, and he continues to live on in the stories we tell and the wisdom he gave us, as well as an endless supply of dad jokes and quotable one-liners for years to come. Let's remember him how he lived, with love and laughter, an unshakable moral compass, guiding not only himself, but everyone around him. As long as I can remember, my dad had one recurring phrase he would always tell to us whenever we walked out of the door. He would say, "Don't do what I wouldn't do." Yes. These words echo in my head whenever I have tough choices to make in my life. Don't do what he wouldn't do. I won't. Thank you.
Hard to follow up from my brothers, and I knew they would have some amazing blasts from the past. So I'm just going to focus more recently to start. I had the pleasure of having some really great moments with my dad this year, and I'm very thankful to that. He retired in Christmas of last year, and he made plenty of routine trips to Toronto. We had an amazing trip to California in February where I spent really quality time with his brother and sister, extended family, and with his mom. His mom is, as Razmik mentioned, fallen ill and being taken care of. But there wasn't a day that went by that he had so much guilt that he wasn't by her side every second. We went there together, and you could just see he was excited and sad and didn't know how to handle the emotions, but he wanted to be there with her as much as he could. And he had so much thoughts of his brothers and sisters taking work off their plate. It never left his mind, and I think they know that, and that was just the kind of guy he was. We spent some great time there. We took a road trip to San Francisco. We spent a beautiful weekend in Whistler for Garen's birthday. We went to the cottage. Him and I swam across the lake together, an almost kilometer swim, and he was healthy as could be, as his doctors had told him. This is why it came as such a surprise from us. And I remember thinking, swimming across that lake, oh gosh, what if something happens to his heart when we're in the middle of this 100-foot deep lake and I'm the only one here? Sure enough, he was right there behind me the whole way. He came back proud as ever, and that was one of his very healthy routines he had in his old age. Most recently, our cousin Patrick on my mom's side hosted a wonderful family reunion, and I remember him hemming and hawing, "I don't know, I'm so busy, I don't know if I can make it." But if there's one thing you know about my dad, if there was family involved, he needed to be there. Even if it wasn't his side of the family. He didn't know much about the term FOMO, but when it came to family, that was something that stuck hard with him. FOMO was always in his mind. He never wanted to miss out on a family event. And I'm very thankful he had that mindset. We had a beautiful time. Him, my partner Simone, and I took a beautiful walk through U of T campus. And if you've ever done that with him, as soon as he steps foot on those cobblestone paths, there's suddenly a skip in his step. He's a kid again. He's walking through hallways, jaunting on about the Oxford-inspired architecture, going through Hart House, going through the gymnasium, trying to do chin-ups and dips and saying, well, I used to be able to do this. Why can't I do this anymore? We found hidden pianos to play, and we had a wonderful time. But the most meaningful part about that visit was when he's going on, and you could kind of see we're sort of like, yeah, we all went to university, we get it. And for him, he gave an amazing perspective. And that was, for him, coming here was just an incredible experience. He grew up in Teheran, Iran. He was living in a Christian community of Armenians as a minority in a country with a different religion. And things were as good as they could have been for that family, but it wasn't easy. He came from humble beginnings. And coming to Toronto was something, almost he couldn't picture, is how he described it. He didn't comprehend what life here looked like. And getting out of the country wasn't trivial at the time. It was either military or academics. And for him, his academics paved the way for him, and education was his ticket to Canada. So this is, my mom will always say how an amazing storyteller he is, and this is how he introduced and you can sort of feel how he's feeling when he's talking about this. And then he came to U of T, and he was in awe. He saw this beautiful campus with an amazing, almost ancient-like architecture, these beautiful corridors and courtyards, and his very own dorm room, where my mom, his soon-to-be wife, little did he know, would come knocking on his window to call on him when he was studying. And the joy, the raw passion that he had when describing this just gave you the unique perspective of how much appreciation he held for this experience. But that wasn't just for U of T or, for any small walk of life. That was for everything. And that's how I realized, he had the utmost appreciation for the people around him, the surroundings, the life he's had, the family he's had, his mother, and he did not take anything for granted. And that was him. In a nutshell, it was just something you look at yourself and you worry about the small things, and then you have that voice in your head of how appreciative he was for his surroundings. And he was, he was as humble as can be. He was as humble as can be. I remember it wasn't until recently when I saw his credentials online that I discovered he had done vast research at MIT and Caltech as a visiting professor, and you hear these incredible names of universities in your head and you think, my gosh, he never brought it up once. My whole childhood, he probably did that when I was 7 years old, and I never heard about it. He never bragged about it, and I even suggested to my mom, I want to put that in his obituary, and she said, well, he wouldn't want to brag about that. And she's right. And another thing was he wouldn't want to leave out all the other universities he contributed to all over the world, China, throughout Europe, throughout North America. He touched everywhere. And I'm sorry, but today I get to brag about you, whether you like it or not. He was brilliant. He was so smart. And I know you've heard from his colleagues, but as his son, it was an inspiration. Even after his retirement, he was very quick to dip his toes into other fields of interest. As I'm sure you know, the texts and YouTube videos he'd send you about anything, And for me specifically, he took a fascination in finance and economics, and all of a sudden he's dissecting these complex publications, and he's challenging traditional investment theories. And I was shocked. I just think you've been retired for 6 months, and you're challenging me on things that I would have considered my expertise. But that was him. He was just a brilliant man, and you never knew what that was going on behind that brain, and it couldn't stop. It really couldn't stop. But most of all, he was a wonderful dad. He was an incredible dad. And there was never a day that he let a doubt that his kids were not the most important thing in his life. They were everything for him. If you ever needed him, he was always there. And not only was he there, he was ecstatic. If you needed him, he was thrilled. Anytime you could just see the excitement in his voice when you needed help, whether it was a math problem while you were sick or whether it was a breakup or anything. He was there, and he was just an incredible father. He helped me through high school anytime I had a small issue, a large issue. He helped me with my essays to get into the university and the program I wanted. But at the same time, he also taught us that for him, from his perspective, he liked to teach us why good enough wasn't okay. And he had a very high bar, but he wasn't crude about it. He loved to explain to you why doing things properly and doing things right and never leaving a stone unturned was so important. And his descriptions were so captivating that it left a long-lasting influence. And it was very early in my life where making him proud became a huge motivation for me. And I remember feeling in the last few days, is this something that's going to fade? But I know it's not, because I still have his voice in my head, and I still think of him, and I will continue to. I'm not worried about his legacy one bit. He touched so many people. he brought so much to this world, whether through his research or his stories or his amazing communication skills, or as Karlin said, talking to the cashier at Produce Depot. There were so many people involved in his surroundings, and I don't worry once about his legacy because I know that it's going to carry on with ease, without friction, so smoothly. And I'm so grateful to have such a great family. It was extremely hard to hear the news, especially because I wasn't with my direct family. And when I came home, it really made me realize when I look at my brothers and when I saw his family from California, I could see him in all of them. And that's a really special feeling. And I really cherished the ability to share his memories and carry on his legacy with all of them, with all of you, and with everyone who he has touched in his life. Thank you so much for coming. It means the world that you are all here. Thank you.
Hi. Thank you. Those four boys have painted a wonderful picture of Davit's life. And I don't need to add anything more to that. You know what he's like. You've heard from his family and his colleagues. I'm going to tell you our love story, if I can do it without crying. We did not have a slow courtship. We saw each other. He asked me out for a date, took me to a cafe in Yorkville, and I had my first cappuccino. Angela, I recommend the cappuccino. We walked home, we embraced and we kissed, and we started our romance that night. I didn't even know his last name. But it was a deep pull that really never ended. We were both, he was in his first year of university, I was in my second, and I had already planned to take the following year off and travel. And you don't change plans for your boyfriend. So it was February when we first met, March when we first saw each other, March 14th when we first kissed. And the following October 4th, I left for Europe on my travels. So I have lots of letters from him. It was 6 months. I'd been away, I came back. And you have the letters, but you don't really know what's happened in those 6 months. While I was away, he'd moved in with his roommate, one of his roommates from Sir Dan's at U of T, and one of my friends from high school, Mike Kelly. When I met him, he would polish his shoes and he'd wear a jacket. I never knew anyone in high school who did that. When I came back from my trip and called on him, he was wearing running shoes, wearing a down jacket. And I thought, okay, they Canadianized him. So I was a bit unsure, where did we stand? And we went into his room and he said, well, we should talk first. And I looked at him and I said, oh, first. And then I knew everything was going to be okay. We graduated together. We had summers apart, me working somewhere. He went back home to visit his family. And then he did his master's in Waterloo. I was doing law school in Ottawa. By then we got married. We're still commuting back and forth. And finally, this is very unusual when you're doing your master's in sciences, I learned. You do your PhD where you've done your master's because it's just a lot faster. You continue your lab work. I was studying in Ottawa, and he interrupted his master's, and then with Todd Martyr, who was a wonderful mentor. I'm sorry he couldn't be here today, but we had great times in his lab. Todd Martyr was a new professor at Waterloo. Davit was his first grad student. Todd was we were friends, and the people in his lab were friends too, and Todd refers to Davit as his son, and he said, and Davit gave me a grandchild because one of Davit's students is now working for Todd. So Davit graduated with his MSc from Waterloo and then moved to Ottawa. And then Andre was born, and we were still students. Then Garen was born, and we were still students. Then he had to do his postgraduate work, so I just finished articles, I interrupted what I was doing, we moved to San Diego. Karlin was born, still students. And then we moved to Montreal, where he had his first academic career, his one and only, and 3 months in, Simone was born. I was at home with the kids, of course, and I was worried what was going to happen with my career. I studied for my bar ads after Simone went to bed. Davit did his studies. We juggled everything. No money. We spent years with cardboard boxes covered in a tablecloth as our bedside tables. Didn't bother us one little bit. We couldn't have cared less. Even when we were getting married, he had gone to Greece to visit his mother and his sister. They were waiting to get their status to the US, and his mother was visiting there. And I said, you know, we've been dating for 4 years. Maybe this would be a good time for you to meet your parents. So I went over there. And it was like, well, since we're here, and who knows when they're going to get back, maybe we should get married. So we got married in Greece. And this picture is our 25th anniversary, where we went back to Greece, and we had a great time. When we were in Athens getting our wedding rings, we went into a jeweler, and they showed us the ring, and we said, well, that's 14 karat. He said, well, I've got a 12 karat. And we said, well, do you have 10 karat? And I think he almost threw us out of the jewelry shop, so we got the 12 karat. Those things just meant so little to us. It was just the fact that we could be together. He was a great father. He was a great husband. My mother always said, you can tell if you have a great husband by the way he treats his mother. And he treated his mother really well. He loved his mother a lot. When we were dating, we would lie down and I'd say, tell me more stories about where you grew up. Tell me what the house was like. Tell me what that park across the street was like. And he'd paint that picture. I could see where he grew up, and he'd tell me, you know, what his mom had been like and what her life had been like as a single mother, where a very patriarchal society, that why would you raise your kids, give them back to the paternal parents? And she said, no, I'll raise them. And I was always grateful for her because we were equal partners. He had no sense of a man would do this or a woman would do that. None. And it was just never an issue for us. Of course, it meant I took the garbage out too, but I also never had to do the dishes. So I've lost a life partner. He's given me so much. He's been with me for 42, 43 years, since 1982. And I'm so proud of having those 4 boys. We heard one of Davit's favorite poems, and that's something that always intrigued me about him. Oh, he really loves poetry, but it was Armenian poetry, so he didn't share that with me in the same way as if it had been other poetry. But he was also a poet. And this is a poem he wrote for me in 1982. And he called it Not a Poem, for Angela. All alone, one full moon night, I walked through our favorite park. When I reached that familiar hill, which we had climbed so many times, I turned into a staring eye, searching for your dark hair and blue eyes. I recalled that you and I walked through here another full moon night. I remembered us holding hands and walking through the dark night. Your eyes embraced the secrets of happiness. Your smile shone in the moonlight. We spoke of love that very night, and we confessed that we loved each other. Then, thinking back to our first night, We recalled how we first kissed each other. Oh, how can I forget that night? How can I be here all alone? No, I have to leave. I ought to go home. On the way to home, I said to myself that when you come back to me one full moon night, I'll take you for a walk to our favorite park. Davit. We wrote lots of letters. My poetry was never as good as his. But I found one that I had written to him. Actually, this one he wrote in December '82, and I wrote this one in September, so just before I left for that trip. And it's called Our Moon. I stop beneath the moon and feel at ease. You, too, are under the silver blanket of its white mystery. And as you fill my mind, my being, our moon reflects your gaze and covers me with your light, holding me close. I always like to think that when we are apart, we could both be looking at the same moon. So I thank you all for coming. It means a lot to all of us to have everyone here. He's going to be missed. He reached everyone. He made friends with people. He looked after all of us. And I don't know how I'm going to go forward, but that's all you can do. Thank you.
Andre, Garen, Karlin, Simone, Angela.